So it is a real honor now to have Dr. Fatih Birol here for a special interview. We will have some 25 minutes to spend with Dr. Fatih Birol. Welcome to Hello Tomorrow. It is a real pleasure to have you here. So the way we'll do it, I will quickly introduce Dr. Birol, and then we will have a conversation about some of the topics here impacting energy, clean tech, and we have the chance to share your views here as one of the world's foremost figures in energy. So apologies, I will read a little bit because Dr. Fatih's CV is very, very rich, so I could not learn that by heart. I'm very sorry. Dr. Fatih Birol is the Executive Director of the International Energy Agency, based here in Paris. He took office as the Executive Director exactly a year ago in September 2015. And actually, he's the first person to have grown from inside the agency. He started as a junior analyst, and exactly 12 years later, he became unanimously voted the Executive Director of the IEA. Previous to your position as Executive Director, you served as the Chief Economist of the IEA and as the Director of the Global Energy Economics team, with responsibilities that included directing the flagship World Energy Outlook publication, shortly called the WEO, which is really the main reference in energy scenario analysis and over the medium and long term. So, during your career, you've made a significant contribution to international policy debate on energy and especially climate change, which is a main topic also discussed here at Hello Tomorrow. You've become a sought-after speaker at major international gatherings, and you've been regularly called upon for private meetings with world's leaders. So once again, let me underline the honor to have you here. Dr. Birol has been named by the Forbes magazine among the most powerful people in the energy world in terms of influence on the world's energy scene. He's also the chairman of the World Economic Forum Davos's Energy Advisory Board, and he serves as a member of the United Nations Secretary General's advisory board on Sustainable Energy for All, SE for All in short. He's also the recipient of numerous awards from government and industry, especially for his contribution to energy and climate economics. In 2013, he received the Japanese Emperor's Order of the Rising Sun, the country's highest honor. He's also been decorated by the governments of Austria, the Golden Honor Medal, France, the Chevalier dans l'Ordre des Palmes Académiques, Germany, the Federal Cross of Merit, Italy, the Order of Merit of the Republic, the Netherlands, Poland, Sweden, Turkey, the US, and the Russian Academy of Sciences. The list is very, very long. He's also the past winner of the International Association of Energy Economics' award for outstanding contribution to the profession. And prior to joining the IEA in 1995, Dr. Birol has worked at the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEC, in Vienna. And Dr. Birol is a Turkish citizen born in Ankara. He earned a Bachelor's of Science degree in Power Engineering from the Technical University in Istanbul, and his Master of Science and PhD in Energy Economics from the Technical University of Vienna. He's also been awarded with numeral Doctor of Sciences honoris, notably by Imperial College London. Now, this is the traditional CV, and I'd like to add here 2 points which maybe are a bit more unconventional. Dr. Birol is also an honorary life member of the Galatasaray Football Club in Turkey. I don't know if you know it, but this is really one of your key passions after energy, I believe. Maybe you can also share a bit about this. And another interesting point that I found is you actually do not own a car. No. Have you ever owned one?
Never. I don't have a driving license.
Okay, so this is so once again, thank you very much. Welcome to Hello Tomorrow. So as we don't really have the opportunity to have a leading energy figure every day, so we thought we'd make this a bit more interactive as questions. Let me just start off with a question. You've been leading the World Energy Outlook, which looks at forward-looking analyses about fuel by fuel and sector by sector. What have been some of the biggest trends in energy innovation recently, and what will be those of future?
Thank you, first of all, for inviting me here, Timur. It's a very exciting meeting. Now, when we look at, first of all, the challenges in the next years to come, I see two major challenges globally. One of them, as we all know, climate change. And energy sector is at the heart of the climate change issue. Why? Very simple. More than 3/4 of the emissions causing climate change come from the energy sector. So without solving the problem in the energy sector, we have no chance whatsoever to solve the climate problem. This is one issue that you all discuss, I am sure. We will discuss how important it is, how feasible to reach the very Paris Agreement here. The second thing is a bit less known, but it is also very close to my heart and what I have been doing at the International Energy Agency and beyond. Namely, today 1.2 billion people, about 20% of global population, they have no access to electricity. So mainly in sub-Saharan Africa, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Southeast Asia. And this is not a trivial thing as well. I mean, if you don't have electricity, you cannot keep the medication for your children in the refrigerator. You cannot read at night. You don't have internet. You don't have access to anything. So this is also a very important issue. So when I look at the next years to come, I consider these two, one, the fight against climate change and fight against energy poverty as two major challenges we are facing at global level. And of course, both of them need a lot of creative thinking and taking initiatives. And of course, startups and other initiatives can play a very important role here, especially in the context of renewable energies. For example, when I look at our numbers, especially for solar and wind, the cost of both of them came down substantially. Only in the last 5 years, the cost of solar PV declined about 80%, and the cost of onshore wind declined about 1/3. Huge declines. I mean, we have never seen such a big decline. And what is the implication of that? Very simple. I discuss with the business community, with the ministers almost on a daily basis. 4 or 5 years ago, the perception, the mainstream perception about renewables was, it is nice, but it is more of a romantic story, renewables. Now, it moved from a romantic story, a niche business, to be a main business with a lot of potential still to have, and a strong penetration for renewables. I think this is an area I see very important, what we have seen in the last few years. And in the next years to come, you ask if I have to pinpoint one area, it is mainly the storage is the main area that I would think we can have some nice surprises in that respect.
Excellent, thank you very much. We actually had one of the speakers talk about new innovative approaches in storage, so it's absolutely very, very crucial. Thank you. The first point you mentioned, climate, obviously leads me to the COP21 agreement having taken place here in Paris. It was a landmark agreement for the first time. And so reflecting on it, I'd like to ask you, so what is really changing, especially in the context that we have already passed the 400 ppm threshold? Maybe if you could please put a few points on this.
Now, as you know me, I am a bit of a skeptical person by definition. So Paris was a very important milestone. It was a diplomatic answer to a global challenge. Now, having said that, even after the ratification of the Paris Agreement, which will be coming into force as of 4th of November, still those targets, those emission targets the countries set are not obligatory. Okay? So there is a momentum now, but that momentum and even the ratification of some of the parts of the Paris Agreement becoming obligatory but not yet the targets doesn't mean that we will reach those targets. And here we need to see that there is a major transition in the global energy system. And as you rightly mentioned, we are already reaching levels such as 400 ppm, which makes to reach our below 2 degrees target, which was defined in Paris, very, very, very difficult. So therefore, for example, I mentioned the big growth in renewables, big growth in the sometimes in efficiency. Yes, but they are still far slower than the pace we need to have in order to reach the Paris targets. And here there are two ways. One, many of us, many colleagues think we have to set a carbon price. This is definitely, it could be excellent to have a carbon price. It will be the best way to induce technological innovation, accelerate it, and to get cleaner technologies having a greater market share. Having said that, when I look at it globally, I don't see a big appetite in major emerging countries to set a carbon price at a level that could give a real boost to clean energy technologies. So, therefore, to put all the accent on the carbon price, in my view, may not be the best idea. I would also suggest that the governments here, in addition to market instruments such as carbon prices, governments need to be in charge for such a collective problem we have globally, and they have to come up with some fiscal and regulatory measures in order to accelerate the transition, because we have to really make much stronger efforts that we have been doing in the last few years. We, as the IEA, track the changes year by year, in which technology what is happening. If I can give you a rough number, we have to accelerate our efforts by a factor of 4 in order to reach our 2 degrees or well below 2 degrees target. So therefore, there is a need for governments here to pave the way and accelerate the innovation. Without innovation, with the existing technologies, we can do better than today, but can never reach the 2 degrees target.
Okay, thank you very much. It was actually leading me to the next question about how, especially the demand growth centers, for example, countries like China or India, are incentivized to invest in clean technologies and sustainability developments. So you've actually partially already answered this. Maybe you wanna add something. What more can be done, especially given the dichotomy of the problem here between developing and developed world?
In fact, China is not doing bad. Today, China is the #1 country in terms of, first of all, renewable energy investments, #1 country in terms of installed wind power, #1 country installed of solar power, and #1 country in terms of hydropower. And global energy efficiency improvements are driven by China. But we have to be realistic. The main driver of Chinese energy system going to more cleaner, more sustainable direction is not necessarily climate change. It is air pollution in the cities. But it doesn't matter. At the end, I mean, it's Deng Xiaoping, one of the former presidents of China, said, if a cat catches the mouse, you don't care about the color of the cat. So it means it catches the mouse, and you can induce the clean energy technologies as a result of air pollution, but it also helps to the CO2 problem, the climate change problem as well. I think the main challenges today with India and the Southeast Asia, Indonesia, Thailand, Malaysia, that part of countries, the emissions are skyrocketing there. And what is rather worrying, in those regions, huge amount of coal-fired power plants, which are subcritical, very inefficient coal-fired power plants, are built today, still, and they will be with us 40, 50 years. So we are looking in the infrastructure for many years to come, And this will be a major problem because 1 ton of CO2, carbon dioxide, going to atmosphere from Mumbai or from Metz in France or from Shanghai or from Detroit, it doesn't matter. It has the same effect for all of us. So the carbon dioxide doesn't have borders. So therefore, the fact that still we have such a huge number of inefficient coal-fired plants built in significant parts of Asia is a major challenge.
And of course, the problem with energy infrastructure is once you build it, you also lock in emissions over a significant period of time. They don't stay for just a couple of years. Thank you very much. So going back to now, we've explained the problems. There are many. Let's go back to the focus on actually addressing them and doing something, which is what we do also with Hello Tomorrow. So local air pollution, you mentioned, is actually one of our tracks: energy, sustainability, waste, and water. So we look at these technologies. Going back to COP, two very important announcements that are critical for the formulation of the investment framework, the Global Clean Technology Investment Framework, have been made. So one is mission innovation, the mission led by 20 countries across the world that have actually pledged to double research and development funding to $30 billion by 2020. So that's the government's side of it. Parallelly, to support this, there's also been a coalition of high net worth, I think 28 high net worth individuals under the Breakthrough Energy Coalition, also led by Bill Gates, that have also pledged to provide funding for early stage startups, which is precisely also what we do here at Hello Tomorrow. So with this in mind, significant amounts of money have been made available or pledged to be made available. How can policymakers capitalize on this momentum and on the recent announcements that have been made on the global stage?
Yeah. So in the COP meeting, there were, as you mentioned, in addition to this two, there's a third one, Clean Energy Ministerial. Clean Energy Ministerial, which brings more than 25 countries together, emerging countries and developed countries, mission innovation to accelerate the innovation. And the third one is the private sector, Breakthrough Coalition. And International Energy Agency is at the heart of all of these three. So in terms of Clean Energy Ministerial, which looks at the implementation of the existing technologies, they look for those ministers a house, a permanent house for that, and many organizations applied to be the house, permanent host of this effort, and they have chosen International Energy Agency, us, to be the host of it, and as of end of this year, we will be coordinating all this clean energy ministerial activities, which is mainly looking at the implementation of the existing clean technologies to address the climate change problem. The second one is, again, a twin sister of the Clean Energy Ministry, as Mission Innovation, which is looking at the new technologies, accelerating new technologies, and through R&D increase. Mm-hmm. When you look at our numbers, CO2 is going up, the interest for addressing the CO2 problem is going up, but the R&D in energy is going down. So this is a bit of a rather interesting picture. While the country is pushing their climate policies, they are not increasing their energy research and development. So therefore, this mission innovation would give a boost to double their R&D, which we are working with the countries who are involved. The aim is, by doubling the energy research and development expenditure, to give a boost to accelerate the innovation. And here our numbers show that in order to be in line with the 2 degrees target, globally, R&D expenditure need to increase by a factor of 5. It's a huge order, yes, huge challenge. There is a big difference between the developed countries' R&D and the developing countries' R&D. Only China is doing well. They are putting a lot of money in energy R&D compared to others. And the Breakthrough Coalition is parallel one with the working with the governments, some private led by Bill Gates, and we are working with them in order to give a hand to the new young startups and to help them to be a part of this coalition.
This is excellent. So, actually, I wanted to ask you, coming to this point, you just mentioned this this coalition between also governments and startups. You tour among the world's foremost conferences, Davos, G20, G8, the most important fora. How have you seen over the last years the debate shift towards these issues? I mean, the question we all ask ourselves is when we read it about in a newspaper, what is really being taken, what action is really being taken on the ground? And are these topics surviving to come on the table actually when these large issues are being discussed? Because as you said, the challenge is tremendous here. A five-fold increase of anything is very difficult.
I think there is a huge momentum. And this momentum, I hope, will be kept as it is, especially if the results of the U.S. election goes in the right direction. I expect with those results and the very fact that we have now Paris ratified and the lower cost of clean energy technologies, I expect in 2017 another push. But once again, we are going to talk about this in our upcoming World Energy Outlook, to which you made excellent contribution years and years.
Thank you.
To reach the well below 2 degrees target is really very, very difficult. You have to, first of all, decarbonize the entire electricity system. It is not an easy thing. Decarbonized electricity system means you will not have any fossil fuel run gas, coal power plants. It is very difficult, especially if you think the current the sunk cost going there. Second, you have to make a major decarbonization of the transportation sector. What does it mean? You go from the internal combustion engines, the cars we have, to maybe electric cars, for which electricity would come from either renewables or nuclear power. These are very, very big challenges. As a person who makes his hands dirty with data years and years, I can tell you that it is easy to show slides on the PPT, but it is very difficult to make that transformation. Therefore, there is a need for governments to take it serious and put some real mandatory, I underline, mandatory rules and measures. Let me give you one example. We talk about carbon price. Something came to my mind now. Before Paris Agreement, I don't know if you have colleagues here from Europe, the carbon price in Europe was €9 per ton. After Paris, there was a big agreement, historic, we celebrated and so on, and you would expect that as a result of that, the carbon price will shoot up. But now, after that, the carbon price went down to $5. There's a big decline. So how the markets perceive is a bit different than the political statements here. So therefore, I still believe that there's a huge role and responsibility for the governments here to pave the way through incentives and through mandatory measures to address this problem.
So, not to be too pessimistic, but with all this in mind now, I think countries that have entered the ratification process make up for something over 56% of emissions. But as you said, there's no guarantee. Do we have a backup plan if it doesn't work?
Backup plan is the following. We need to find a way. How do we adapt a world which has many surprises for us in terms of the droughts, in terms of the hurricanes, in terms of much bigger immigration that we have seen now, and there's a big, major problem. We have to adapt to that. So there's therefore, in addition to our mitigation efforts, we have to, I think, pay attention to adaptation, how do we prepare ourselves to a world which is very, very different than what we used to have, such a planet.
Okay, so this is on the pessimistic note, but maybe let's turn again back to a bit more the positive note. So you mentioned the cooperation between governments and startups, and that they need to, that governments need to also provide the framework within which they can act. We've talked about investment being made available. The previous panel also talked about ways how large corporations can cooperate with startups. So there are ways to address it, especially science-based startups like we foster here with Hello Tomorrow. They try to address the issues exactly at the core. These young entrepreneurs, it's very important to give them also something on the way. Maybe just to go back a bit to your position as as a highly regarded international energy figure. What advice would you give to startups that are, or to innovators that venture into this very risky path of actually trying to solve some of these very, very crucial problems from a bottom-up and not just a top-down perspective?
Now, my answer is very, very simple. I mean, the governments, once again, the governments and maybe industry should prepare the basis for the startups for two things. Startups should feel that A, they make money, and B, they make a difference. So if they believe, they are convinced that they will make money through their initiative, through their projects, and B, they believe that they will make a difference in the lives of the people, better lives, I think we will see much stronger contribution from startups. And I see a lot of promising startups in the energy sector with the colleagues I discussed. But in order to see a much bigger, because there's a huge potential there, much bigger contribution from startups, they have to feel that they can make money, and the government should prepare the incentives there, and they should feel that, and they will understand that they make a difference, and they will be much more active afterwards.
This is a very important message coming from you, so thank you very much for that. Do you envision also giving perhaps advice to those in the courses of meetings held at the IEA? There's an incredible brain power of experts at the IEA that could be used, for example, for mentoring or so. I mean, is there things like this that you have thought about?
Yeah, with pleasure. We have, as IEA, we have 39 different technology research programs, which we call technology collaboration programs, where 6,000 energy technology researchers work. And I will be very happy to organize a meeting, a conference with the startups, if you are interested, to exchange information and experiences here, because they cover the entire world and all clean energy technologies. It will be a pleasure, and it will be a pleasure for me and for my staff, for my colleagues, to also to learn from the experience of the startup initiatives.
Thank you very much. This is really, really nice to hear, very important, so we'll follow up on this if we may. I'm also aware of time, and Dr. Birol has a very tight schedule, so actually we are running over the 25-minute mark. There are lots of questions. There will be lots of things we could still go on in the conversation. Or maybe anything else you want to add on giving. You saw the format of the conference here. We have technologies presented, developed. We have conferences. We have startup pitches, TED type presentations. It's really groundbreaking, as the name says. Hello Tomorrow. Perhaps a final note on to give us and the whole science entrepreneur community for tomorrow? Yeah.
Perhaps I can say the following, Timur. I said for the startups, I think they should bear in mind two things. One, making money. Second, making a difference. And this is very, very normal. And when I look at the startups, they are, most of them at least, as far as I know, they are focusing on finding a solution to climate change. It's a huge problem for all of us, the entire world. But my plea would be to look at also the other challenge I underlined, the the fact that today in Africa and India, 1.2 billion people have no access to electricity. And there is also a need to come up with some clever solutions to their problem in addition to climate change. I think it would be less making money, more making difference if you look at that. And I wanted to leave you with that rather modest suggestion from my side.
Thank you very, very much once again. We're aware of the time constraints, so thank you very much for having come here. Please join me in thanking Dr. Birol for his insights and for the short conversation we had. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, man. Thank you.